No. I just, last period, they were working on a major grade, so I wasn't teaching the whole time. So I had time to go ahead and get the daily snapshots for both classes put up.
Yeah.
I usually put it on after I'm finished teaching, but if it's one of those days where people are working and I'm going, well, what am I going to do with myself? I got ahead. All right. So anyway, that was, that's just the snapshot that tells you the stuff. The video will show up probably after third period when I have a chance to load it. Okay, so linear regressions. You all have calculators on your desk?
Yes, ma'am.
Do I? No, but I'm going to go get one. All right, so on this one, 8.5, we will have a CMHW. Take a look at the problem numbers that I have listed there. I'll give you a due date on it when I figure out how long these notes take me. You just never know how these things are going to go. All right. Let's talk about things also that are coming up. Don't forget your expert follow-up where you are gathering information and making plans for the future. Be on top of that. That's a major grade due not this Friday, but the Friday after. Vocabulary test. This is your money maker. If you did not make a 100 on the vocabulary, my guess, I don't know, maybe you messed up a couple of those things at the bottom, but we'll cover those terms today. But study it so you can come in, because you know I'm changing the order of all the stuff. Make sure you're good. If you really need that strong grade, make yourself some flashcards or something. All right? CMHW 8.3 tomorrow. Okay?
Wait. Yes.
Okay? And that was out of the book. And then Delta Math is due. Oh, I need to look at the calendar. I don't think it's next Monday. I think it's the Monday after that. Right?
Is 8.3 what we turned in already?
Huh? What?
Did we turn that in already?
8.2 you just turned in.
I talked to Trapper.
Okay. So 8.1 had a worksheet. 8.2 had a CMHW. 8.3, nobody has turned that in already that I am aware of. Okay? Unless they just did it today. Because there weren't any just sitting there yesterday. So that's due tomorrow. And you just said?
I talked to Trapper about the follow-up thing.
Oh, good. So did you make an appointment or something?
He said,
do an interview?
he comes like every Wednesday. So I told him I'll talk to him either this Wednesday or next Wednesday.
You know, if you do it this Wednesday, you will have a less stressful rest of your week. Just a hint. Okay. All right. So you've seen scatter plots. Agreed? Okay. So let's see if we can figure out some words. It's a blank on the blank plane used to show two blanks. I'll put an S because that's, it's plural. And how they might relate to one another. Any thoughts on any of these blanks?
Yes.
What you got?
A pattern on the linear plane used to show two correlations and how they might relate to one another. One blanket, I don't know.
Okay. Nice try and nope and nope.
I don't know about the rest, but I think the second one is Cartesian.
There's another name for it. Cartesian is the very fancy name. Do you know where that name comes from?
Something related to Latin. I don't know.
No, it's actually after a French mathematician named René Descartes, C-A-R-T-E-S. And so he is the guy who came up with the Cartesian plane. The word we're going to go with is the more common one, which is it does start with a C.
French did descend from Latin, so.
Okay, yeah. It's on the coordinate plane. Okay, so René Descartes, one of my favorite mathematicians, one day, as legend has it, because a lot of times your math history and becomes legendary, like Newton, the apple falling on his head type of thing. But apparently, according to the legend, René Descartes was bored one day and he's just sitting around in his living room, twiddling his thumbs, looking up at the ceiling, and there's a spider. Could have been here because I see spider webs up in the corner. But there's a spider crawling around on the ceiling in the corner. What?
I think I figured it out. I'm sorry, I'm listening though.
Okay, hold your thought. Can you remember it?
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, he's watching that spider and he starts thinking, I could keep track of that spider's position if I had like a grid on the ceiling and he's this far over and he's this far up and I could track him in 2 dimensions, and that's where the whole XY coordinate plane was created by Rene Descartes. Before that, algebra was not really connected to geometry. When you showed algebraic functions and equations, you didn't relate them to points on a graph. So anyway, yay for you for knowing about the Cartesian plane. Now you know something else, a little trivia about Rene Descartes, who's also famous in algebra for Descartes' rule of signs to figure out how to know how many, trying to think, real and imaginary solutions a polynomial might have. So, how many of them are going to be positive solutions, negative solutions, imaginaries. Anyway, so Descartes did several important things. But we also call it the coordinate because it's the plane where we put coordinates. So, you got some other possibilities?
Okay, a relationship, and then the third one, variable.
You are correct on the variables. So, what does a scatter plot look like? It's a graph. Okay, so this is some serious teamwork here. All right, we're all putting in our little 2 cents and we're getting close. So it's a graph on the coordinate plane that's used to show 2 variables, which I didn't put an S on, but it's there now, and how they might relate to one another. Okay, and so these variables could be all sorts of things. All right, it might be age and people's height. Okay, it could be months and the amount of money in your savings account, in which case you need to start saving more because you're spending too much. Okay, it could be
Nothing.
shoe size and IQ, which doesn't really correlate, right?
The first one could also be like number of shark attacks at the beach and amount of ice cream sold at the beach, because those tend to correlate. They aren't related, but they tend to correlate because they would happen in the
Really?
summer more often.
Okay, so I see. So the common factor is it's summer and there's more people at the beach, so
Yeah.
more ice cream is sold and
More
shark. But that's not causality, is it?
No.
Oh,
Correlation without
I
causation.
never would have thought about
That's my
that.
favorite example of it.
Yeah, cool. I love that. I love the fact that you have a favorite example. And that makes me so happy. Okay, 1 blank is shown for each pair of data values. Yes, 1 point. Oh, we are on a roll. I love doing this with second period. If somebody is absent in third period and they're watching this video, this is how I need my class to be. Okay, not having to drag information, they volunteer it. I think next year I'm going to make it real clear on the first day of school. If you don't want to talk, just don't take my class. I need input. I love you guys. Okay, so we have 3 different types of correlations here. What do you think you might call this one? It's a positive correlation. And no correlation. Positive, negative,
No linear.
and no correlation. Okay, so the linear part just happens to be talking about the next thing that we're talking. So the line is not part of the scatter plot, but we will be trying to find a line that can fit our data nicely. All right, so if the trend seems to follow the pattern of a straight line, then it is said to be a blank blank.
Wait, what? If the trend seems to be following
Of a straight line.
linear correlation.
You are so close. It is definitely linear, but it's a linear relationship, which correlation is not far different from that same meaning. They correlate. They are related. Okay? When this happens, hang on to your word there, we say the blanks represented in the data are,
Correlation.
okay, they're correlated,
Oh, wow. I thought, wait, no, you said S right there.
okay? All right, so what are the things that are correlated here? We've already used it once.
Points,
Not the points,
variable.
the variables. Keep in mind, when we have a two-dimensional graph, an x-axis and a y-axis, there's two variables. There are two quantities that we can assign numbers to that we're seeing. Do they correlate? And if you think of the word correlate, it's really co-related, related together. Pretty good word, all right? So, let's look at some examples here. Let's start with example 1, identifying correlations, all right? So, consider the relationship between the following variables and what kind of correlation might show up in a scatter plot of the data, all right? I'm not giving you any data, you're just going to try to think about these situations. Decide if you think the variables would likely have a positive correlation, a negative correlation, or no linear correlation at all. All right, so look at A and help me to identify our two variables. We've got the number of cigarettes smoked and the probability of lung cancer. So what are our variables?
Cigarettes smoked and probability of lung cancer.
Okay, two variables. Now, here's what I want you to think about. As one of the variables increases, let's say that first variable increases. So, if someone smokes more cigarettes, how do you think that affects the second variable?
Goes up.
That also increases. So if the two variables are both increasing, we're going to have a positive correlation. Okay? Go for a different color highlighter just to keep my notes all pretty. Okay, next one, the number of minutes spent on social media sites by college students and their first semester grade. So what are our variables?
Minutes spent on social media site.
Okay, minutes on social media
And then, college, wait, nope,
Their
first semester grade.
grade.
and the grades. Okay, so what do you think might happen? What do you think they're probably wanting you to think?
It's negative.
As you spend more minutes on social media sites, how could that? Okay, what do you think would happen to your semester grade?
It would lower
Probably be lower.
How could that be?
because you're not paying attention to your actual work.
Yeah, have y'all experienced this in your life? Do you ever get sucked? I'm not, well, I guess for me, it really actually is a lot of social media sites because the only social media site I use, I'm old, so that's Facebook, right? Okay? And for the longest time, I mean, for years and years and years, or maybe they weren't there and they just appeared in the last year. But for the longest time, the little video reels, I never would look at them at all. I generally hate videos. If I need to find out how to do something, my husband is a big fan of, well, I'm just go watch a YouTube video. I'm like, I look at that YouTube video and go, that's 17 minutes to tell me this? I just need a list of the steps. I just want to read a list of the steps and go do it. I don't want to watch your video and hear about your family history and blah, 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 blah. I just cut to the chase. Give me a list so I can figure out how to do stuff. Okay? And so I never, ever watched the videos. I didn't even know what people were talking about when they said reels. Didn't do that. But after my husband died, I found myself with more time on my hand and more boredom because who am I going to talk to, right? And so I started noticing the reels. And what's creepy is the reels started noticing me. What do I mean by that?
Your interest.
They figured what I looked at caught my interest, and so in their little computer algorithm, they're going, oh, let's throw out more. So now I have the new, I told y'all I'm becoming an artist, and I tell you I decided I'm going to be an artist. Okay, so, because the YouTube says I can, right? So anyway, So when I see a little video of somebody pulling out a piece of, paper and they've got a watercolor, I click that video. And so YouTube knows Nita Stewart wants to watch videos of people doing watercolor.
And you keep scrolling and scrolling.
And so you watch one, you're like, that's neat, and then I save it so that the next time I'm sitting down the paint, I can pull it back up. But what's right below it? Another one, and another one, and then it throws in something to just test. Well, do you like this too? And I'll scroll past and it's like, okay, we missed it on that. So anyway, it sucked me in, and I can start off thinking, well, I'm just gonna look at one or two little reels real quick, and then what happens?
An hour goes by.
Hundreds.
An hour goes by, and what could I have been doing in that hour?
Literally anything else.
Literally anything else. I could be exercising, I could be loading my dishwasher, I could actually be painting. Sometimes I will spend hours looking for something to paint, and then I never sit down and paint anything at all.
Yeah, companies like Google and Facebook are quite infamous for hoarding as much data about what their users like as possible to maximize the time their users spend on their sites.
Yeah, they are sucking me in, and they are sucking me in big time. Big time.
They call it
Okay.
They call it doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling? Yeah, and so for the college students, do you think it is entirely possible that there are some college students that doom scroll their grade
Absolutely.
down? This is very real, isn't it?
Because
Okay.
I guess
I feel like
if it's for like a politics class or something, it could help a little bit.
Well, if I were taking a watercolor painting class, it might be of great use. I have improved my skill. I have most definitely improved my watercolor skills because of all of my scrolling.
I feel like
Let me show you some of my watercolor painting. I'll go scroll on my phone and show you some. All right, I have improved. I've been doing this, let's see, I started at the beginning of February. I mean, I've played around with watercolor in the past. It's not the first time I've done it, but now I'm just like totally sucked in. That's all I want to do. So my goal is, I've got these little watercolor notebooks, and my goal is to fill them up. They have like 20 pages, and fill up enough of those that I have a dozen of them sitting on my shelf. So one day when I'm dead and people are cleaning out my house, all my grandkids will be able to go, oh, I can have one of Nina's notebooks. And so when I go visit my grandkids, I take my watercolor stuff and we paint together. And my oldest granddaughter, I'll say, you want to spend the night? She goes, can we paint? Yeah, we can paint. And so we sit and paint together, and we are forming wonderful memories. This is good stuff, right? Okay, so let me show you, hang on, a few of the paintings as I finished my first whole notebook. Okay, so anyway, check out some of these cute little things.
Wow.
Isn't that cute?
dang.
And that, I'm really proud of that. And that was like a 5-minute thing. I watched a video and they're like, bloop, 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 bloop. And so I'm going, bloop, 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 bloop. And I'm like, that's kind of cute. Does mine look like theirs? Not at all. But it looks like something. Okay? So, and so what I'm also doing is, you see all the little writing? I'm journaling a little bit. I'm putting a little bit of what I did that day. I'm putting the date on it, and I'm putting a little bit of what I did that day, especially if I spent time with some of the grandkids. I name them by name. Wouldn't you like to have that for your grandma? Yeah, sure. Anyway,
If you hadn't,
look, check out that guy. Those little flowers are really pretty. But this one, I actually used a photo. I did not go online and find a video of how to paint this. I made that from a photo that I took of my house on the snow day. And that's what my house looks like, y'all. That's what it looks like my house. It's like, woohoo. So, anyway, okay, this one I thought was pretty cool.
Wow.
I totally copied that and learned a little bit about perspective and some skills, That took me a while. Look, hang on. I think I was trying to paint some, my daughter-in-law decided for baby Shep that she would like me to paint some pictures of dogs. I don't know, my daughter-in-law sometimes thinks I can do anything. And she always dreams up these wonderful projects, and I'm like, Kenzie, I don't know how to do that. She goes, we'll figure it out, And every single time we figured out something. So when she said, I really would like a picture in baby Shep's room of dogs, a little boy. And so she sent me a picture of their dogs, and so I've been practicing dogs, and dogs not so easy. But she actually framed my picture, and I was like, you don't have to frame the picture. You can tell which dog is which. That's
You
about
ever
the best I
thought
can
about
say.
making children's books?
Huh?
You ever thought about making children's books?
These are my children's books.
Right.
Because I can't take the character and come up with different, I can draw what's already been drawn, except for my house, which was kind of a photo. But anyway,
Like,
so,
put math into
I
it.
don't know. But, I'm not getting worse. I'm getting better. There's a British lady with all these little videos. And so when I painted these little fat birds, I paint them with a British accent because I'm listening to her and she goes, so start and paint a potato shape. And I'm like, here's my, I'm not right-handed. All these people are right-handed, so I'm doing it. So I painted my little potato and then gave it a little, anyway. So
Yeah.
we're working on that.
I
Hang
cannot
on.
believe how much a video helps with learning stuff. If you
It
never watch
does.
those.
It's very useful. That's what I'm telling you. The YouTube says you can be an artist, So, anyway, look, I figured out how to do shadows, so I thought my leaves were really popping with those shadows, so now I put shadows on everything. A little excessive on the shadows. I'll probably tone that down as I learn more. A little red barn. This does not look like the photo I was painting, but it still looks pretty decent, I think. Okay, and look, this back to the British lady. You paint a potato, and then you put a little head on the potato, and then before long you got 3 little bunnies. So, anyhow. So I was sending all the pictures to my sister, because I'd finished my first notebook in like a month. And I started on another notebook. So yes, good things can happen. And you can also waste a lot of time. That's okay too. So, is it a waste of time if I'm becoming a great artist? I don't know. Last night, yeah, it was a waste of time. There were things that needed to be doing. I got up this morning and I committed myself to, I need to do the things before I just scroll through and just scroll and scroll and scroll some more and hours have passed. Doom scrolling. Gosh, what an accurate description. All right, part C. The amount of credit card debt incurred by a college freshman and their IQ score. Now,
So what was the answer for B?
okay. Oh, for me, we didn't write it down. We got so busy. So this would definitely, as one value goes up, the other goes down. What kind of correlation is that going to cause? A negative. Now, the book had one answer for this one, but as I think about this one again, I kind of wonder, what are my 2 variables in C?
IQ and
Your IQ and your credit card debt.
So they want this one to be no linear correlation.
Okay, yeah, because you seem like they give you one of each, right?
But if you're smart, you're gonna have good smart debt.
You would think, but also if you're smart, you may be leaning towards medical school and you may have a lot of debt. So I have a feeling that, let's say this was IQ and this was debt.
And also, IQ isn't really like a perfect measure of intelligence either.
Right, and just because you have a high intelligent quotient does not mean you have any common sense either. So there may be a person with a really high IQ score that has very low debt because they're really cautious. Okay, there may be a person with a really high IQ score that has a really high debt because they're going to medical school and they're figuring the only way I can get to the big bucks is you've got to spend money to make money, right? And I'll pay it off later.
Or maybe
There may be somebody with, I think you could very possibly see all the things. So, and there's also back here, there's possibly, people that scroll a whole lot and have great average. But I bet if they scrolled less, they could even up their average, their grades.
It's
So-
also possible that the high IQ person skipped out on the money knowledge for just scholarly knowledge.
Yeah, and there may be one of those high IQ people that got a bunch of scholarships, and then there's one. I have 5 kids. One of them has been called Smart Brother in the family for decades, but that kid could never get to school with shoes on because he could never find his shoes. There's no common sense. So anyhow, now he's gotten much better. He happens to be probably one of my best debt managing kids of all now, but this is because he married a wife that's very smart as far as budgeting. Okay, so what are we going to call this one
No.
if the graph looked like that? No linear correlation. So this 8.5 is specifically about linear regressions. All right, and we're going to use our calculator to do linear regressions. But I have mentioned to you that coming up, there is our big critical thinking project for our college course. And in it, I'm going to have you gather some data off the internet and have you try to see if it is linear, but also to see if it's exponential. So when we do linear regressions, I'm going to show you that you could also run an exponential regression or a quadratic regression or all sorts of other regressions. Huh?
Cubic regression.
We could, I think we do have cubic regression in there in the calculator. We'll see when we pop it open. So that you know what we're doing for these linears, you will also do it with an exponential regression on your big project. Which you will do that project mostly in my room, and we'll consult one another as we go through it. Okay? So,
There's also a ordered regression and a natural logarithm regression. That's cool.
okay. Is it an NL, an LN?
LN.
LN regression, okay. I think there's even maybe a logistics, but I'm not sure. Okay, so anyway, let's do a little skill
Sine
check.
regression?
Huh?
Sine regression?
Yeah, sine wave. Ooh, we're doing sine waves and trig right now. Okay, so skill check. Identify two variables that likely would have a linear relationship. So I want you to try to think of something that you think might have a linear relationship, whether it would be positive or negative. But if you scatter plotted and did this, you would tend to see a negative trend or a positive trend. Okay? So come up with two. So I'm gonna give you a chance to think of something, and then think whether it's negative or positive. Okay? And then also try to think of something that has no, So somebody had to go think these three up, right? So you think up two. One of them that you're going to go, there's no connection. And one of them where you're going to go, I think there is a connection. And if there is, positive or negative. I'll give you a minute or so to think about that. While y'all are thinking, I shall hydrate myself. I wonder if there's a correlation between hydration
And brain fog.
and brain fog. I think there definitely is. Matter of fact, I know there is. So would it be positive or negative?
Negative.
So as hydration
if
goes
you
up,
have- yeah.
brain fog goes down. How do you measure brain fog? Maybe
Hydration levels.
productivity,
Yeah.
your job productivity,
Energy levels, maybe.
possibly. Number of headaches.
Mhm.
So, I know
Much
a few
caffeine.
years ago I heard something about that proper hydration affects how kids can think in school. So, anyway. Ooh, I got one that I think there's a definite positive correlation between, which I did not put on here, but I'm gonna throw it out as mine.
I have one too.
I'm gonna go into freezy mode here.
I know, but do you want us to write our...
Yeah, write down, because you're trying to come up with two, okay?
So you want us to come up with one as either positive or negative?
And one has no correlation. Oops, I just like made up a word there. All right. You can really just almost throw anything out there for the one that doesn't correlate. All right, what y'all, anybody want to share one?
For positive is the same example as earlier, shark attacks at the beach and ice cream sales at the beach.
Okay, so, but, yeah, so if you did it, it would appear that they are causing one another somehow,
Yeah.
dependent upon one another,
No,
but they
they
just
usually-
happen to have
They just happen to have
a
shared
common, yeah, thing. So you could also say number of shark attacks at the beach and average daily temperature.
cause. That would be a direct.
And you could say number of ice cream sold and average daily temperature, because that's the common cause of both, huh? Cool. Anybody? What you
Football
got?
players and head injuries, like
Oh, okay, so what?
football players and head injuries.
Okay, so how could we, what's the number we put on football players? I mean, so, you know, you could say the number of head injuries and,
Like the more people that play football, the more likely
Are-
there is to be more head injuries or something like
okay, or it could be the time spent playing football.
that. Yeah.
You know, so you could
Like-
say how many
like
hours
football careers.
or how many years have you played football, you know, and number of head injuries.
So like
or-
football career length.
Yeah, and head injury, something like that. Because there has to be measurable data that you can put a number on. Did you come up with something, Jacob?
The amount of sun and the amount by fish biting.
Okay, so is it like sun is like number of daylight hours? Okay, and fish fighting, so do you think that'd be a positive correlation? Do they bite more in the sun or they bite more or not?
They
You could-
don't.
I don't-
Yeah.
They bite more in the sun because you spend more time fishing in the sun.
Possibly, but I know the fish like don't they like the cooler water
Yeah.
places? So they're kind of
They,
depend.
they like it cloudy.
They like it cloudy, so they don't come up towards the surface. Is it too warm near the surface or something if
Yeah.
it's sunny? So the more sun, the less the fish bite. Nice negative correlation. Well, give me one that you came up with.
I came up with, grades on tests and study time.
Okay, so one would think, you know, you're gonna have some outlier. There's gonna be some kid who didn't study and made a great grade, and some kid who studied a whole lot and blew it because of test anxiety. But in general, at this point as seniors, have y'all kind of realized the amount of effort you put in kind of pays off on, you know, if you got the test back and you knew that low grade was because you did not study enough. Okay, what you got? Pick one of yours, either a correlation or a not correlated.
The amount of pins in a jar and time spent at home.
Okay, the number of pins in a jar and then the number of hours spent at home. Are those connected? No. Okay, so I just came up with two, but my first one is a little bit subject to ADHD because I started writing it and then I couldn't remember what the other variable was by the time I finished writing the first one down, but I think I was going to say milligrams of caffeine consumed and number of headaches. Do you think there's a connection between caffeine and headaches?
Yes, absolutely.
So do you think this would be a positive as this goes up, headaches would go up? Or as this goes up, would headaches go down?
I think it's
Depends on-
subject to change. So
Yeah, it depends on how a person's brain works.
Okay,
Me
well,
personally-
so it depends, I think, okay, so first of all, caffeine is mixed with aspirin and ibuprofen to make Excedrin, I think. And, wait,
no, wrong word.
aspirin and Tylenol. I don't know. Anyway, but aspirin and caffeine are synergistic. Alone, they can help headaches on their own and provide relief. Put them together, it really helps provide relief. So some people might say, I need the caffeine to help me get rid of this headache.
Yeah, but if you don't drink the caffeine, it's terrible.
It gives you headaches. So this could go either way, couldn't it? In my opinion, so here's for me. I am not a person that uses caffeine on a regular basis. So I do not keep caffeine in my system. I don't drink coffee. I just wake up like this every day. Okay? I think I produce my own caffeine. Anyway, I don't drink coffee. However, I do keep a jar of 100, or a little, medicine bottle of 100 milligram caffeine tablets, and somebody laughed and said, that's like not much at all. But for me,
Yeah, I-
it's enough to have me wigging out. My hands will start, I'll see my hands shaking, you know, just a little bit if I do that. I keep it in my car because sometimes I'm driving long distances and I'm tired. And it's, you know, a safety thing. If I've driven to Houston and I gotta go home up for Houston, and I'm like, I'm drowsy, I will take a caffeine pill.
They
The
sell those-
week the grandbaby came, okay? So I had some late nights with the granddaughters, and then I was driving to school. 3 mornings that week I drove to school, and I was so drowsy driving to school that I thought, this really isn't safe. I'm going to take a caffeine pill. By the time I got to school, I'm like, ugh. So I took that caffeine on Wednesday morning and Thursday morning, and on Friday afternoon, I didn't come to school Friday because I was like, I'm just so tired. I'm worn out. You know, I used to do this all the time with 5 kids, 2 kids now, but I'm in my 60s, not my 20s. Anyhow, so I think I took caffeine 3 or 4 days in a row, just one, okay? By Monday of the next week, I had the worst headache. I will almost, if I take more than one of those caffeine pills, if I take one, I'm usually fine. But if in a 2 or 3 day period I take more than one of those caffeine pills, I can guarantee that 2 days after that last one is taken, I will have the worst headache.
See, that's crazy because.
Yeah. And so how could I fix the headache?
I drink
Take
at
another
least
pill.
4.
I could take another caffeine pill. And so this is how addictions work, right? And so I'm trying very, very hard to not be addicted to caffeine. How many of you consume caffeine all the time?
Yeah.
So what happens to you if you stop taking caffeine?
Yeah.
You'll get a headache, and you
And
know.
you'll be exhausted.
I use caffeine pills because they're cheaper than energy drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get that, but like.
But I mean, so
I don't know, I just don't like
it
taking
relieves
medicine.
headaches, but remove it, and it causes headaches.
Big
It's
problem.
interesting. So you could almost say up or down, okay? And then my other one, the number of photos on a phone, and a person's annual income.
Intake?
Income.
Probably not related.
Probably no. What do we say? No correlation. Linear or otherwise, I don't think so. Y'all are packing up, so does that mean the bell is about to ring?
Yes.
So, how is your theory of we can get through 3 pages of notes today? No, because it's interesting. You know, it's interesting stuff. I like stuff to discuss.
Yeah, I personally don't. I'm lucky enough that my body just produces enough energy for me when I sleep that I don't really need caffeine.
I sleep well.
Some of us
I
don't
generally
sleep
sleep really well. But what about consumption of caffeine and hours of sleep? You know, do you
Is
think
the
that
hours of
caffeine?
sleep go down the number?
I feel like you tend to
of
drink.
caffeine?
I feel
Okay,
like you
well, let's
tend
say caffeine is the independent. As the amount of caffeine goes up, it
Number of
might
sleep
cause
goes
you to not
Like,
get enough
if
sleep.
and then.
Yeah, it's if then, it's causality. So, anyway, kind of fun stuff. Lots of things to talk about. Okay, I am going to stop this recording.